Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sleepy Survival. Tonight, your survival challenge is simple. Make it through a full medieval day without a toilet. Before we begin, take a deep breath, settle in, and if you enjoy these sleepy journeys, you're welcome to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy it, and only if you're still awake long enough to remember you did. And where are you listening from? And what time is it for you? Good. Now let's begin your training. You wake up to the medieval dawn and immediate regret. It's early morning in a small medieval town, and you're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress that smells like a barn auditioning for sainthood. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the room is already alive with the sound medieval people feared most. Your neighbors waking up. The thatched roof above you lets in a soft honey-colored glow, and also the cold breeze that makes you wonder why medieval architecture was basically four walls and a suggestion. Your blanket is wool, your pillow is optimism. Your first thought is, I need to pee. Your second thought is, where? Welcome to a world with no flush toilets, no running water, no privacy, and no I'll hold it until I get home, because this is home, and your home does not care about you. You reach the edge of the bed and look down at the solution every medieval person relied on, the chamber pot, a cold, dented clay bowl beside your feet, waiting, judging, promising nothing except splashback and humiliation. You lift it, shivering. This is your morning routine. This is everyone's morning routine. As you use it, you cannot help but think, this is the best medieval technology you will encounter today. The chamber pot parade, every household, even the rich, starts the morning with a ritual we might call domestic sanitation, but the medieval world called just toss it out the window and hope nobody's walking by. You carry the chamber pot carefully to the shuttered window. The wood is warped, the latch loose. This window has witnessed centuries of bodily betrayal. You take a breath. Below, the street is empty. Even the chickens know to keep distance until after sunrise. Then you hear it, the universal medieval safety announcement. Gardy-loo, a friendly way of saying, incoming, and it's not rain. You fling the contents into the street. It splashes onto the stones with a sound that should not echo, but does. This is your first survival lesson. In the Middle Ages, danger didn't fall from the sky. It fell from second-story windows. You close the shutters. Behind you the chamber pot sits quietly, pretending it didn't just end a man's morning 2 streets over. The streets come alive, unfortunately. You get dressed, a linen shirt, wool trousers, and a smell that will follow you the rest of your life, and step onto the street. The medieval morning is peaceful. Chickens roam. Bakers begin kneading dough. A cart rattles over cobblestones. And everywhere, the unmistakable smell of a city without plumbing. Every doorway has a bucket. Every alley has a puddle. Every gutter carries the combined biography of the entire neighborhood. But medieval people don't gag. They walk through it like modern people walk through Wi-Fi signals, aware but resigned. A woman steps out of her home with a wooden bucket and dumps it into the gutter. The contents stream away toward a central ditch that runs through town. You swallow hard. You were planning to buy breakfast later. Now you're reconsidering the concept of food entirely. Where does it all go? A medieval mystery. You follow the gutter and discover the medieval town's marvel of engineering. The open sewer, a shallow channel carved into the center of the street, guiding waste out of town. Sometimes it flows, sometimes it sits, sometimes it bubbles ominously. As if plotting, people step over it. Children drop sticks into it, like it's a game. Dogs evaluate it for flavor. You realize the medieval world has 2 types of water. The water you drink, the water you pray you never touch. Unfortunately, medieval people often mixed these up. Communal latrines, the Middle Ages' worst social club. Not everyone uses a chamber pot. Some go to the public latrine, a long stone building over a trench that empties into the river. You step inside. It is an experience. The latrine has stone benches with holes, no partitions, no privacy, no shame, and an atmosphere that announces itself before you arrive. Several people sit side by side, chatting casually as though this is a tavern and not a place of suffering. Someone nods at you. Morning. You nod back. You sit. You stare straight ahead. You inhale shallowly. You try to pretend you are a rock, and none of this is happening. To make it worse, Medieval toilet paper does not exist. You look around. What's available? Moss, straw scraps of wool, and if you're unlucky, a communal sponge on a stick. You decide to leave. The river, not a bathroom, but definitely a bathroom. Crossing the bridge, you look down at the river that powers the mill wheel. Its surface glitters in the sunlight. Peaceful, silver, beautiful. A woman is washing clothes on the bank. Upstream, another woman empties a chamber pot into the water. Farther upstream, a man is drinking from the river. Your eye twitches. You have discovered the medieval cycle. Someone dumps waste. Someone washes clothes. Someone drinks. Everyone wonders why the town is sick in winter. Why doesn't anyone fix this? You ask a local man why there aren't better toilets. He shrugs. We have privies, he says proudly, pointing at a wooden shed behind his house. You peek inside. A hole, a plank, a swarm of flies, a smell that could curdle iron, but compared to the street, it's luxury. Built it myself, he says. Best seat in town, and he means it. Deeply, sincerely, terrifyingly. Cesspits. Civilization's greatest regret. Most houses have a tiny courtyard with a cesspit, a deep earthen hole that catches everything you'd rather forget. When it fills, which happens faster than you want to think about, someone is hired to clean it out. These heroes are called night soil men. Why night? Because no one wants to see this happening. Not even him. His job description: descend into a pit shovel. Centuries of regret, carry it out in buckets. Dump it outside the city. Try not to think about his life choices. You pass one carrying 2 brimming buckets. He nods politely. You nod back, because he is braver than all medieval knights combined. Your first meal of the day, probably a mistake. You buy bread from a street vendor. It looks good. It smells good. It is, however, made with grain ground in a mill powered by water that also carries laundry soap waste fish, and several things the narrator refuses to name. You take a bite. It's fine. Truly fine. Medieval people didn't live long enough to develop high standards. The survival mindset by midday. You realize a pattern. Nothing is clean. Everything is normal. And nobody is panicking. Except you. The medieval world survived because immunity was earned through daily combat. Expectations were non-existent. And people accepted the smell the way we accept traffic. You start to adjust. Your breathing slows. Your horror dulls to a low simmer. This is the Middle Ages. This is hygiene. This is survival. And somehow people lived through this long enough to invent plumbing. Morning in a medieval household doesn't start with breakfast. It doesn't start with prayer. It doesn't even start with opening the shutters. It starts with the smell, and unfortunately, that smell is you, the bedroom bucket, your new roommate. You wake on your straw mattress, stiff-backed, itchy, and wrapped in a thin sheet that smells faintly of old wool and new sweat. The early light drips through the shutters in thin, dusty stripes, illuminating something in the corner of the room. A bucket, a very important bucket. The chamber pot, although no one calls it that. To most medieval families, it's simply the pot. To guests, it's please ignore the pot. To you, it's survival. It is crafted with all the elegance and prestige of a bucket, meant to hold everything your body couldn't keep inside overnight. Its wooden rim is slightly cracked. Its sides are stained with a history you would rather forget. Its base shows a pattern of rings that no one should ever study too long. You didn't use it last night, not because you didn't need it. You certainly did, but because you fell asleep earlier than expected, exhausted from a day of doing medieval things, which is to say, drowning in chores like a peasant in a pit of laundry water. But now you need it, desperately. So you stand, stretch and shuffle toward your new best friend. You position yourself. You try not to breathe. You do what must be done. There's no privacy curtain, no polite distance, no moment of dignity. Just you, the bucket, and the gentle morning sounds of your family loudly pretending they can't hear anything. Where does it go? This is the part you may have been hoping I'd skip. Unfortunately, the Middle Ages were not known for skipping steps. What you produce goes straight outside, ideally before breakfast, because no one wants the scent lingering when porridge is on the stove. Every household has its own disposal method. Method 1, the backyard dumping spot, a shallow pit designated for waste. sometimes fenced, sometimes not, often shared with chickens who are either brave or incredibly foolish. Method 2. The slop bucket, a larger communal bucket downstairs where everyone empties their personal pots. This bucket eventually gets carried out to the street. Method 3. The street toss. A simple, time-honored technique, open window scream, Gardiloo, or nothing at all. Tip bucket. Listen to the satisfying splash of societal decay hitting cobblestone. Today, fortunately for the locals, your household uses method 1. So you carry your personal bucket, carefully, gently, praying for balance, out into the cold morning air. The morning yard, a symphony of smells. Your yard is small, a rectangle of patchy weeds, a stack of firewood, a chicken or two, and a wooden fence that does absolutely nothing to keep smells in or out. The designated dumping site is a dark, damp, circular depression behind the woodpile. It smells of things that once lived, things that died, and things that shouldn't be remembered. This is where you must empty your bucket. You inhale the cold morning breeze, savoring the illusion of cleanliness, and then pour. The sound is horrible, the smell is worse. You start your day with regret. You return inside with the bucket in hand, ready to rinse it with a ladle of water. This part is important, because if you forget to rinse, the entire household will remind you. Loudly, wash, rinse, repeat. Sort of water is precious. Soap exists, but it's harsh, expensive, and smells of old lard, so your cleaning ritual goes like this. Rinse pot with a bit of cold water. Swirl dump rinse water into the yard pit. Wipe rim with a cloth you hope is clean. Pray bacteria hasn't yet been invented. You place the bucket back in its corner. The day can now officially begin. The public option, medieval communal toilets. But not everyone has a yard. Some people live in tightly packed towns where the only backyard is the neighbor's shadow. For those unlucky souls, mornings mean walking to the public latrine. Imagine stepping outside your door and turning left toward a small wooden shed perched over a stream. A structure held together by nails, prayer, and wishful thinking. Inside are long, communal benches with holes cut into them. No walls separating one seat from another. No privacy, just eye contact, knees touching, and the awkward understanding that everyone is doing the same thing. It's a terrible bonding exercise, but you bond nonetheless. Public latrines functioned inconsistently. When the stream below ran fast, waste washed away naturally. When it didn't, latrines became swamps of unimaginable texture. People slipped, people fell, people regretted. There were latrine workers too, brave or cursed souls who cleaned out the pits, using shovels, buckets, and unbreakable spirits. They were paid well but were, understandably, single for long stretches of time. Noon arrives, and so do more problems. After breakfast, which tastes faintly of smoke and the faintly clean bucket in the corner, the day moves on. You work, you sweat, you drink watery ale because water itself is suspicious. And then, eventually, you need to relieve yourself again. But now the yard is full of chickens, the pit is buzzing with flies, and you really don't want to carry the bucket past your neighbors while they sit in the sun mending clothes and judging everyone. So you do what medieval people often did. You hold it, and hold it, and hold it, until, finally, biology triumphs. You sneak behind the house, just out of sight, and relieve yourself against the fence. It is surprisingly normal, expected even. Children do it, adults do it, kings probably did it behind tents. Everyone aims for a corner of something. The yard is basically a patchwork of places where everyone has quietly contributed to the soil. If you're rich, things aren't much better. You might imagine medieval nobility reclining on cushioned seats, perfumed, surrounded by servants, ready to whisk away unpleasant smells. Not quite. A noble toilet is either a close stool, a fancy chair with a hole and a bucket beneath, or a garde-robe, a long vertical shaft that drops waste directly down the castle wall. The garde-robe is basically a glorified cliff with a toilet hole carved into the stone. The shaft empties somewhere horrible, a moat, a ditch, or a small pond of doom. Servants clean the close stool every morning, often while cursing under their breath. You have never known the value of small luxuries until you've seen the relief on a servant's face when a noble household buys a second chamber pot. The smell follows you by midday. You've become nose blind. Everyone in the village smells faintly of sweat, smoke, mud, wool, ale, and things we will not list again out of mercy. But here's the thing, medieval people know they stink. They talk about it, they laugh about it, they complain constantly. The only thing they don't do is try to fix it, because water is risky, soap is expensive, cleanliness is a luxury of time and safety. So everyone simply accepts that when you walk through a medieval town at noon, you're walking through a cloud of history's natural fragrance. Afternoon, the roadside option. You leave home for the remainder of your tasks, to gather wood, fetch grain, visit the market, or deliver wool to the weaver. And that, of course, is when your body decides you've miscounted your ability to hold it. Medieval towns solve this with alleys, bushes, the occasional ditch, and the simple rule: if no one sees it, it didn't happen. Privy pits dot the edges of farmland, usually surrounded by stinging nettle. Nature's security system. If you kneel behind a tree, no one comments. If you use the river, someone might comment, but only if they're upstream. Nature is your bathroom, and nature isn't always polite. Evening, the return of the bucket. Night falls again. The door is locked, the cold creeps in, and that bucket waits patiently in the corner. Once again, your family pretends not to hear anything. Once again, you are reminded that survival in the Middle Ages meant accepting that dignity was a seasonal luxury, rare, fleeting, and easily overpowered by bodily needs. You settle onto your straw mattress, you wrap your blanket around your shoulders, you close your eyes, and you think, I survived another day without toilets. Somewhere outside, a night breeze drifts through the yard. Somewhere else, a tavern's latrine creaks ominously. And somewhere a poor latrine worker swears he'll quit tomorrow, knowing full well he won't, because someone has to keep the Middle Ages flowing. You fall asleep. The bucket watches. You'd think, after a lifetime of waiting your turn behind a chamber pot, or slipping quietly behind an alleyway cart when nature demanded attention, that a village might offer a little privacy, a corner, a tree, a moment of mercy. But no, in the Middle Ages, privacy was not a right, it was barely a rumor. And tonight, as you step out into the heart of the village, lantern in hand, cloak pulled tight against the wind, you begin to understand exactly how public-private life really was. The sound of everyone's business. The first thing you notice, noise, not the pleasant, sleepy kind, not the quiet chatter of street-side markets, or the creak of wagon wheels rolling over ruts, but the unmistakable, very human sound of bodies doing what bodies must. A man clearing his throat outside a tavern, a woman telling a child, just go behind that hedge and be quick about it, a pig squealing because someone chose the wrong place to squat. It's all normal, it's all expected. You walk through it like someone navigating a forest of human necessity. The village center is still lively, even after sundown. A blacksmith's hammer rings from across the square, a rhythmic clang that almost drowns the sound of a drunk stumbling behind a rain barrel. Almost, near the well, two women gossip as they scrub linens in buckets. They don't pause or whisper when someone walks past carrying a sloshing pot of whatever. You clutch your lantern a little tighter. You're beginning to understand why medieval folks rarely blushed. They didn't have the luxury. The communal yard behind the tavern. Behind the tavern, the heart of every medieval village, lies a space no traveller forgets. The communal yard. It's not a latrine. It's not organized. It's not even particularly designated. It's simply where people go. Tonight, you step back there by accident. You were following the smell of roasting onions drifting from the kitchen window and didn't notice the side door where a tired-looking man emerged, wiping his hands on his tunic and muttering, "Better out than in." There are 5 people using the yard at once. A woman squatting behind a stack of firewood, a man relieving himself into a trench dug last month, someone's toddler being held by the arms as a parent says, "Just go here, it's fine," a teenager trying to pretend no one can see him, and a drunk who clearly doesn't care who sees him. Everyone in this space has one silent agreement: don't make eye contact. You back away slowly, lantern dimmed, heart full of the kind of sympathy only shared embarrassment can inspire. This, apparently, is survival. The river that was never sacred in the daytime, the village river, looks peaceful, geese drifting along its surface, laundry strung on ropes hung from trees, children splashing near the shallow bend. At night it becomes something else. Not sacred, not forbidden, just convenient. A man crouches near the riverbank, silhouetted against the moonlit water. He's humming, as if nature's call has become a kind of meditation. You turn away, because you see a second person upstream doing the same thing, and a third, and then a woman filling a bucket for cooking in the morning. She sees your face, shrugs. "This is why we boil it," she says, and you finally understand why medieval broths always tasted a little earthy. Farther along the river path, you spot 3 boys sitting on a fallen log, giggling at the adults relieving themselves openly. One of them kicks a stone and announces, "My father says the water carries everything away." You look at the current moving lazily under the moonlight. It does carry things away, but not far. Tomorrow morning, that river will be feeding the livestock, and washing the butcher's knives, and soaking the wool that reeks of sheep and sweat. The river remembers everything. The village pretends not to. The cottage where walls are thin. You return to the village lanes weaving through the cottages, each one a crooked assembly of timber beams, mud plaster, and thatch. Walls in the Middle Ages were not walls as you know them. They were suggestions. You pass by a cottage where lamplight glows warmly through a chink in the boards. Inside, a family sits around a single table. A father scraping stew from a pot, a mother tying a baby's cloth diaper, 2 children arguing over who gets the softest piece of bread, and in the far corner, behind a curtain made of woven rushes, someone uses a chamber pot, a cough, a sigh, a scrape of wood on dirt floor, and no one bats an eye. This isn't rudeness. It isn't awkwardness. It's simply the way homes were built. Everything happening in one room, one space, one shared breath. You keep walking, aware now of every sound behind every thin wall, hushed whispers. A baby crying. Someone quietly groaning in the dark, perhaps with sickness, perhaps with life itself. Privacy was rare, extremely rare. Even your own breathing feels too loud. The witching hour behind the church midnight nears. The village quiets, and like all medieval villages, this one has a hidden truth. When the church bells stop, certain corners become busier than you'd expect. Behind the church, past the wooden pews, past the stone wall, past the small graveyard where lanterns flicker among leaning crosses, there is another well-frequented spot. The sacred and the profane are separated by maybe 10 feet of packed earth. You walk cautiously behind the church, lantern held low, expecting silence. Instead you find someone squatting beneath an oak tree, pulling their tunic down quickly when your lantern catches them in its halo. "Oh," they gasp. You apologize. They apologize. Then you both stare at the ground because acknowledging each other too directly would break the fragile dignity holding the moment together. Behind you, a monk's voice drifts through a window as he chants late-night prayers. Grace in the chapel, waste behind the chapel. The Middle Ages required very flexible definitions of holiness. A fox darts past you, startled by the encounter. You envy its simple life. The alley where no one should stand too long. You follow a narrow path between 2 homes, an alleyway barely wide enough for you and your lantern. The smell hits first, like sour earth, like rain on old wood, mixed with something that never quite washed away. This alley is where the poorest villagers relieve themselves, not because they choose to, but because they have nowhere else. You walk carefully, eyes softened, because survival deserves respect no matter how undignified it may appear. A single cat sits at the end of the alley, tail curled around its paws, staring at you like a judge of human behavior. It blinks slowly. You bow your head in apology, and pass by. The privy that everyone fears there is, technically a real latrine in the village. The communal privy, a tall wooden structure built over a deep pit lined with stones. You approach it near the outer lane, lantern high. It looks innocent enough. A small hut, a crooked door, smoke lantern hung by a nail, but the smell tells you everything you need to know. A man exits and shakes his head at you. "Watch your step," he warns. You look inside anyway, because curiosity is stronger than fear. The pit is deep, very deep. Its darkness is absolute. You cannot see the bottom, only the glint of wet stone. A board with 2 holes sits across the top, one narrow for children, one wider for adults. You realize why everyone prefers the river, or the alley, or the tavern yard. You step back fast. No wonder villagers warn children not to play near the privy. Falling in isn't just humiliating, it's fatal. Tonight you will hold your bladder until sunrise, a wise decision. The quiet walk back, you return to your tiny room. Moving through the village slowly, lanterns flicker behind shutter cracks, fog pools in low places, a dog barks once at nothing, a man snores loudly in his sleep, window open to the cold. You smell bread rising in a clay oven. You smell other things rising from corners. You politely ignore. This village is alive, deeply, imperfectly, honestly alive. And in the space between every chore and every hardship, people have carved out a rhythm of survival, not comfort, not dignity, but endurance. You open your door, slip inside, exhale, because once again tonight you learned what it took to live in a world without toilets. You made peace with the lack of privacy, because everyone else had already made theirs. In the Middle Ages, privacy was a luxury no one expected. And tonight you survived the village that forgot the meaning of modesty. Tomorrow you'll face something new. For now, rest. You don't truly understand medieval life until the moment you meet the night bucket, the loyal, terrible roommate that lives in every household, from ragged peasant huts to high-born manor chambers. It sits in the corner, pretending to be humble furniture, pretending to be helpful, a wooden bucket, a clay pot, a wicker thing lined with pitch, sometimes even a pewter bowl if someone really believed they were fancy. But you soon learn the truth. Every medieval home has one. No medieval home can escape one, and every medieval person resents the living soul out of it. Tonight, unfortunately, it is your turn to use it. The night begins with denial. After the chaos of the village, the alleyways, the hedges, the riverbank, and the thin-walled cottage life of communal honesty, you finally return to your room. You close the door behind you, you breathe, and there it is, the bucket, lurking in the corner like it's been waiting for you. The candlelight flickers across its rim, turning it into a shadowed, judgmental circle. You tell yourself you don't need it. Not tonight. You're a reasonable person. You have boundaries. Surely medieval people didn't need it every night. But they did. Because once the sun goes down and the village gates close, you have three choices. Use the bucket, use the dark outside and hope nobody else is squatting there first. Hold it until dawn and pray your bladder has the moral backbone to stay loyal. Tonight you choose the first option, because you're weak and it's cold, and you've already seen too many villagers behind hedges to risk becoming one of them. The bucket approaches, you drag it closer to the bed, the way medieval people have done for centuries. It makes a low scraping sound against the floorboards, a sound that is, quite frankly, sinister. The medieval chamber pot has two moods: completely silent during the day, pretending it doesn't exist, deeply, emotionally loud at night, when every movement echoes like a warning from God. You settle onto the straw mattress, hoping to psych yourself into sleep first so you can pretend the bucket is for emergencies only, not for your regular nightly use. No, you're above that. You're evolved. You're lying to yourself. Within a few minutes, your stomach twists, the result of medieval food, medieval stress, and medieval everything. Your body whispers, "It's time." You whisper back, "Is it though?" It is. The bucket is a spiritual teacher. You approach it reluctantly, the way monks approach enlightenment. Except monks don't have to hold their noses and pray, the floor doesn't creak under them. And you learn something medieval people understood very well. Privacy is not a place, it's a performance. You bend your knees slowly, quietly, you hover, trying to land with the grace of a medieval cat. The bucket accepts your offering, though not silently. Medieval materials have their own acoustics. You learn humility, you learn timing, you learn to breathe through your mouth, and when it is finished, when the ritual is complete, you stand up with the dignity of someone who has survived a personal battle. You're stronger now, you've grown, you put the lid on, if your bucket has one. Many do not. Medieval life is cruel like that. The real problem isn't the bucket. No, the real problem is the morning walk. Because in the morning you, or whoever has drawn the short straw, must perform the sacred duty, carrying the bucket outside. There is no ceremony for this, but there should be. It is the emotional equivalent of carrying a bomb you yourself built. Medieval people, professional survivors that they are, have perfected several techniques for this task. Technique #1. The fast walk, carry it as far as possible, as quickly as possible, while pretending you're holding something elegant like wine or fresh milk. Technique #2, the look away. If you don't look at it, perhaps nobody else will either. Spoiler, they absolutely do. Technique #3, the this isn't mine. Face a practiced expression that communicates, I'm merely doing a civic duty, helping a friend. Don't think too much about this. No one believes you. Dumping the bucket. A medieval choose-your-own adventure. When you reach the yard, you have options. Option A, the yard pit. A shallow pit behind the house meant for dumping everything. It smells like disappointment and medieval ambition. Option B, the gutter. A quick, illicit splash into the running gutter that also waters vegetables and occasionally cleans boots. Option C, the river. The preferred choice of 90% of medieval people, and the eternal enemy of anyone living downstream. Tonight, as dawn stretches through the fog, you head toward the pit. You pour, steam rises, nature cries a little. You walk back inside victorious, spiritually older than when you left. Your room still knows. When you return, the bucket sits washed and empty beside the door. It looks at you with wooden indifference. You realize something. The bucket will be here tomorrow, and the next day, and every day, until medieval technology jumps forward by about 500 years. You sit on your straw mattress. You exhale. You remember all the people outside who simply squatted behind hedges. You remember the woman behind the church, the teenager behind the rain barrel, the men beside the river, the boys laughing, the pig startled, the monk chanting, the communal privy with its abyss of doom. You think, maybe the bucket isn't so bad. Then you lie down, pull your blanket up, and drift into medieval sleep. A delicate thing, easily broken, never quite restful, but at least you survived another night. And in the Middle Ages, survival is the only real luxury. You don't make it far down the muddy lane before the smells begin to layer themselves into a kind of medieval perfume. An aroma so complex, so deeply woven into daily life, that people of the Middle Ages barely noticed it. They spoke of it sometimes, muttered about it under their breath, but mostly they accepted it as simply the air. But you fresh traveller from a clean, flushable century are not immune. You inhale, then regret it, and then, strangely, adjust, just like everyone else. Welcome to the town itself, where people survived without toilets not because they enjoyed it, but because the entire world around them conspired to make the terrible feel normal. The morning gutter walk. The street outside your home is a narrow labyrinth of timbered houses, their second floors jutting out so far that they practically shake hands in the middle. Between them lies a single central gutter, more a trench than a drain, where everything the town doesn't want ends up. Everything. Night soil, dishwater, animal waste, dye runoff from the cloth workshops, the occasional unlucky fish, and once, according to village rumor, a goose that simply gave up on life. You pull your cloak tighter and step onto the path carved by generations of boots, avoiding the worst of it. Villagers greet you with sleepy nods, careful footwork, and the quiet resignation of people who have survived far too many seasons of muck month. An old woman sweeping her doorstep looks up at you. Mind the fresh patch, she warns dryly. You look down. You do not want to know what the fresh patch is, but you nod politely, stepping around it like a medieval ballet dancer, learning her first choreography. A dog trots past, tail wagging proudly, carrying a stolen bone twice its size. Behind it, two children chase each other, barefoot in the mud, giggling as if all of this is completely normal, because for them it is. Why the town smelled the way it did. Smells weren't an inconvenience. They were the town's oldest citizens. They lived here before you. They will live here long after you leave. And they each carry a story. 1. The tanner's corner, where hides soaked in urine, water, and the strength of men who had far less choice than pride. 2. The butcher's channel, where blood washed down into the main gutter, making the rats extremely enthusiastic about life. 3. The dye makers run off bright red, deep blue, and sickly green water, spilling into the lane like a rainbow having a nervous breakdown. 4. The alehouse buckets tilted at dawn, their contents poured straight into the street with an apology and a shrug. 5. The privy behind the church used when people wanted privacy, dignity, and the vague hope of divine forgiveness. And these smells mix, swirl and fuse into something the medieval nose barely registers. You hear footsteps behind you. Two men hauling a pair of sloshing buckets suspended from a shoulder yoke. They nod at you politely, as if carrying two miniature disasters is the most ordinary morning routine in the world, which for them it is. One of them lifts a hand in greeting and says, "River's low today, won't take everything." You can't tell if that's meant to comfort you. The privy streets of the poor. Not everyone had a bucket, not everyone had a chamber pot, not everyone had a corner behind a curtain. The very poor relieved themselves wherever they could, behind a leaning fence, behind a cart, into the bushes behind a cooper's shop, into shallow pits, dug beside the animal pens, and sometimes if you were unlucky enough to be walking past, right at the edge of the street. It's not a scandal, it's survival. A man in rough wool tunic steps behind a broken wagon, assumes the classic medieval crouch, and waves apologetically as you pass. "Sorry morning rush," he mutters. You pretend not to see. He pretends not to exist. The social contract is honored. Nearby, a woman is pouring the contents of a bucket directly into the gutter, wiping her hands on her apron as she does. She catches your eye. "Better out than in," she says cheerfully. You consider responding, then decide she's right. When waste meets water, you finally reach the small stone bridge that crosses the town's central stream. Calling it a stream is generous. It resembles a liquid biography of everyone in town. Laundry, runoff, wastewater, dyes, kitchen scraps, the occasional broken pot. Everything finds its way to the river eventually. A boy sits on the bridge's edge, fishing with a crooked stick. He lifts a hand in greeting. Caught 3, already. You glance at his bucket. 2 fish, 1, something else. You hope he can tell the difference. But he beams with pride, swinging his legs. Hunger is an editor that erases hesitation. Downstream, a woman kneels at a small laundry platform, scrubbing linens with a determination usually reserved for warfare. Each time she dunks the cloth, a cloud of suds, or perhaps something else, billows into the water. She waves at you from across the bank. "Makes 'em clean enough," she shouts. You believe her, or you pretend to. People in this town aren't careless. They're clever. They have to be. Because hygiene isn't about luxury here. It's about staying alive long enough to see the next frost. The night soil man's cart. You're halfway to the market when you hear it. The distinct, sloshing, rumbling approach of the town's least glamorous hero, the night soil man. His cart creaks around the corner, pulled by a donkey that looks like it has seen the worst of humanity and learned to ignore it. The man lifts a hand in greeting. "Morning," he says, as cheerfully as someone surrounded by buckets of human waste can manage. His job is simple, horrible, and essential. He empties latrines. He carries the waste beyond town. He dumps it in pits designated for decomposition. He is the sanitation system of an era before sanitation. He pulls his donkey to a stop beside you. "You new in town?" he asks. You nod. He gestures at the muddied street, the open gutters, the haze rising from morning waste. "You get used to the smell," he says, then adds with unexpected wisdom, "but you should never stop noticing it." And with that philosophical flourish, he clucks his tongue and continues down the road, wheels splashing through puddles that are best left undefined. Why no one died from the smell alone. The scent of medieval towns is legendary for its potency, its complexity, and its ability to bring grown men to their knees. But notably, it didn't kill people. What killed people were the things they couldn't smell. The bacteria in water, the fleas from rodents, the invisible world riding on droplets of waste. Ironically, the people who lived cheek to bucket with these smells had stronger immune systems than you do right now. If you tried to live here for a year, you'd likely be face down by midsummer. A woman passes carrying a basket of onions. She holds the onions close to her face, inhaling deeply to wash the smell of the street from her senses. It's a trick everyone here knows. Behind her, a baker tosses buckets of hot water into the gutter, sending a plume of steamy sewage-scented mist drifting into the street. A dog barks at it, as if attacking a ghost. People adapt. You learn to place your feet where the ground is driest, your breaths where the air moves freely. your thoughts anywhere but here. Survival, in the Middle Ages, wasn't pretty, but it was practical. The town market, a festival of smells. Finally, you reach the market square, a broad, muddy open space, surrounded by vendor stalls. Here, the smells become strange companions rather than enemies. They mingle with bread, herbs, roasting meat, and the fresh-cut lavender, sold by an optimistic woman who knows full well her product cannot defeat the battlefield around her. She waves sprigs of lavender at passers-by, shouting, "For your home, for your bed, for your privacy, for the smell." Her sales pitch is flawless. You buy a sprig. Nearby, the fishmonger slaps a trout onto the counter with a wet smack. The cheese merchant cuts into a wheel so fragrant it could be used as a weapon. The alehouse spills its morning crowd into the square, men and women clutching tankards because ale is safer than water here. And in the middle of this lively chaos stands a barrel overflowing with waste, the communal dumping point for market vendors. A man tosses a bucketful into it, wipes his hands on his tunic, and returns to slicing vegetables like nothing happened. You look around for someone who seems concerned about hygiene. No one, not even the chickens wandering between stalls, happily pecking at whatever the world provides. How people actually avoided disease here. Hospitals are few, doctors are expensive, and misfortune is always lurking. So the townspeople invented their own survival habits. They boiled water for broth and ale. Heat was their invisible ally. They cleaned linens more than themselves. Clothes mattered more than bodies. They used herbs with genuine antibacterial properties. Thyme, rosemary, sage, mint. They relied on constant airflow. Windows open, shutters propped, doors left ajar. They avoided stagnant puddles like cursed wells, because they were. They trusted the people who handled waste. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was sacred. And above all, they listened to their noses. A bad smell wasn't just unpleasant. It was information, direction, warning, guidance. The medieval nose was a survival tool. Yours, unfortunately, is not. Walking home through the town of smells by midday, you begin your walk back home. The gutters haven't magically cleaned themselves. The waste hasn't vanished. The smells haven't thinned. But something in you has changed. The woman scrubbing linens waves at you. The children hop across puddles. The night soil man tips his hat. The baker empties another bucket. Each person you pass navigates the smells with the practiced grace of someone trained since birth to survive this world. They breathe it in, they exhale, they continue. And slowly, slowly, you begin to understand. The town doesn't smell bad because people are filthy. It smells bad because people are alive. Animals, waste, food, work, sweat, rain, fire, sickness, joy, sorrow, labor, all of it mixes into one constant sensory reminder that humans here endure. Every day, every season, every storm, every sunrise. This isn't a town with bad hygiene. It's a town fighting the battle of existence with tools that barely work and faith that refuses to break. The smell is simply the scent of survival. You step inside by the time you return home. The air inside your house smells almost pleasant. A faint mix of wool, smoke, dried herbs, and the memory of last night's stew. You close the door behind you. The sounds of the street fade. The smell of the town drifts away. The bucket waits in its corner. You sit on your straw bed, lavender sprig in your hand, and exhale. For a moment, just a moment, the world feels quiet, and strangely, impossibly, you're beginning to feel like you belong here. You've made it through a full medieval day, a marathon of smells, buckets, gutters, wells, and mystery puddles that modern plumbing has erased from memory. But the question remains, how did people actually survive this, and how will you survive the night? Because now that you've walked the town, watched the gutter, dodged the splashes, eyed the water barrels, counted the night soil men like guardian angels of sanitation, and sniffed approximately 6 varieties of medieval air hazards, you're starting to understand. Survival back then wasn't noble, it was an act of stubbornness. Let's break that stubbornness down. 1. The first rule of medieval survival: accept that everything smells. There is no escape from it. Not in the streets, not in the market, not even in your own home. The air is a soup, and you're the garnish. Everyone smelled, villagers, nobles, monks, the baker, the blacksmith, the person who sold you that slightly wilted cabbage. Even the cats probably had opinions about the general atmosphere. But here's the secret. After a while you stop noticing it, not because it disappears, oh no, but because your brain taps out. It simply folds its arms and says, nope, I'm done, you can handle this yourself. And in its own way, that's survival. 2. Keep the water moving. Standing water is your enemy. If it's still, it's dangerous. If it's moving, it's less dangerous. Not safe, exactly. Just minimum viable cleanliness. So you learn to judge water by movement. Fast-moving river water, acceptable if boiled. Slow gutter water, absolutely not. Unless you want to meet the local graveyard tour guide early. Barrel water, fine if nobody dumped anything into it recently. Well water, good, but keep an ear out for rumors of bad spirits, which is medieval code for something died down there. People survived by cautiously trusting the least suspicious water they could find, and by boiling everything as if it were out to get them, because frankly it was. 3. The medieval bathroom routine. Not for the weak. Your own bathroom, if you can even call it that, is a corner bucket. If you're lucky, it's a reasonably deep one. If you're unlucky, it hasn't been emptied since yesterday. Tonight, in your dimly lit room, you look at your bucket and wonder, how did humanity ever make it to the 21st century? The answer is simple. We had help from armies of humble, underpaid workers who saved us from drowning in our own filth. The bucket carriers, the gutter sweepers, the laundry women, the well keepers, the tanners, the alehouse cleaners, the night soil, men the street side. Don't step there, dear grandmothers. They were the unheralded sanitation department of the medieval world. They survived by doing the jobs no one else wanted, and everyone survived because they did them. 4. The food that tried its best. Medieval food didn't always come with the cleanest preparation spaces. A butcher's table might spill into the gutter runoff. A fishmonger might rinse trout in questionable water. A cheese seller might keep their wares at the perfect temperature, somewhere between outside and too close to the wall. And yet, people survived through salt, the original medieval refrigerator. Salt everything, salt more than everything. If you think you've salted enough, double it. Smoke, hang your food in smoke until it tastes like the inside of a chimney. Congratulations, you now have preserved food, boiling. Soup solves everything. Even water that looks like regret becomes drinkable with enough heat. Bread is life. Bread is safety. Bread is the I give up of medieval cuisine. Food safety wasn't safety, it was strategy, and your survival depends on it. 5. The art of dodging disaster. Here's what your day has taught you. Every step in a medieval town is a gamble, not a fun gamble, a survival-based one. You dodge windows, where chamber pots might fly. You dodge crowds who aren't watching where they're flinging things. You dodge the tanner's corner entirely, because it's basically chemical warfare. You dodge the gutter, even when you think it's clean. You do not dodge the lavender cellar though. She is your patron saint now. Medieval life is essentially a live-action obstacle course with consequences. If you make it home without anything landing on you, you win the day. 6. The night routine of someone who wants to see tomorrow. You're finally home. Candles flicker. Herbs hang from rafters. Your straw mattress emits a faint crunch. You have made it through a day most modern people couldn't handle for 10 minutes. Now what? Step 1. Close the shutter. Not because of cold, because of bucket windows. Step 2. Wash hands with whatever passes as clean water. A tiny bowl, a bit of lavender, a prayer. Step 3. Inspect your clothes. If anything concerning landed on them, hang them by the fire and pray the smell burns away. Step 4. Empty the bucket carefully. Tomorrow morning, before sunrise. Do not trip, do not spill. Your dignity depends on this. Step 5. Crawl into bed. Pull the wool blanket over your shoulders. Listen to the quiet hum of nighttime, the street sounds outside, the soft echo of the market closing down, and at last, finally your body exhales. You survived a medieval day without toilets, and you didn't just survive, you adapted. 7. Reflection, the strange triumph of human stubbornness. lying there in the dim candle glow, lavender tucked beneath your blanket. You realize something. Humans weren't supposed to survive medieval sanitation, but we did anyway. Because people found ways: boiling, burying, sweeping, salting, sharing herbs, timing chamber pot dumps, building gutters, inventing night soil routes, learning which puddles to avoid, and trusting the river to carry away the rest. Civilization crawled forward, inch by inch, carried by people who refused to give up, even when the entire town smelled like it was losing a fight with itself. And so did you. In this quiet room, wrapped in rough wool, listening to the distant splash of someone emptying a bucket too late at night, you understand. Survival isn't glamorous, it's practical, it's stubborn, it's human. Tomorrow, the town will smell the same, the gutter will run, the buckets will fill, the lavender cellar will smile, and you will rise, stretch, open the shutter, and quietly decide to survive it all over again.